Hello, everyone. The title the title of tonight's episode is Beyond Systems of Resurrection. And a concept has come to me, which I consider this concept to be the phoenix within, which is driving this talk. Excuse me just a second. The concept of the phoenix is a very interesting concept. And it is the idea in ancient mythologies around the world of a creature that is in some sense made of flame, and in some cultures, before hell came into place, the idea of hell, fire was seen as a source of purity. It did not just purify your experience of temperature, and it did not just bring light to the world, but it was just pure. They would use fire for healing methods as well, like to sealing wounds and whatnot. And so the phoenix is like this pure presence of a shaped moment. And when the phoenix dies, it turns into ash. And then from the ashes, a new phoenix arises. I found a pattern in this story that I saw as if the phoenix was a metaphor for the egoic construct, for the idea of self. And the idea of ourself, like a phoenix, is being true to its design, but then going through an experience which makes the past become the future. One thing one can playfully say that the mind um, is a mechanism that transforms the past into the future. And in all these years, we have to entertain time. Like, you see, the thing about the evolution of a civilization, especially a species that's multidimensional, is that it cannot just jump to another world and avoid the world it began from, because the world it began from has an influence on the mind, on the personality, on the way that the intelligence of the moment engages as a form with the world. Without language, we'd just be moving eyes. But language gave our sight a value that is not visible, and yet it is not invisible. This is why I became fascinated, like, by my imagination, because I'm like, what is it? Okay? Because for a long time, I have a twin brother, and my name's Amin, his name is Ramin. And when we were young, he had a very open imagination. And then there were moments where I would not have any imagination, I would just be a moment. It's as if, like, my intelligence had no curiosity to shape the world, it was still watching the world. And the story of life, especially the way society has been designed, is that you start off learning first, and then you act. You receive, then express. And so many people are getting marketed by society and media to a point where they don't want to, in some sense, receive first, they just want to express. And what I mean by that is that the ego's purpose is to fulfill its design. Ego is a program. The phoenix lives as it turns into ash, comes to a phoenix, turns into an ash, turns into ash, and then in some sense arises again. And what is that? That is this constant, everyday waking up, every moment, being able to judge. One has to ask, who is the judge in any room of man's existence? You see, the judge is the attention that is accepting reality. And that attention, if it does not study itself, it will believe in a world of form to a point that it will not, like, how can I tell you? As if, like, you're this vast being, but your attention is on only a little part of this painting, this cosmic painting. And it's like you gotta realize your comfort zone is just having the concept of I'm stuck in a comfort zone and fear and all this, that is nonsense. Because once you really see the opportunity, once you see that there is intelligence active, once you see, as like beyond the reasons to leave this plane of existence, there are reasons to be in it. When I existed in this world, I heard many stories of the world and I was curious. And through that curiosity, I began realizing everybody has their own story. And I'm like, how could this be true? How could this be true? How could any human being create such a belief system that aligns with every being's unique world and eyes, which none of us like have each other's eyes in some sense? And I'm not talking about a sort of technological situation where in the future we're all connected, like we're all one advanced computer, because we have in some sense in our arrogance and ignorance accepted the machine before the spirit. And when you accept the machine before the spirit, there's nothing happens to the consciousness. Your matter is turbulent. So I find, in some sense, our task as human beings is to be the pilots of consciousness of future generations, to realize that you don't change the cosmos by being, by not even having the enthusiasm to see it. The phoenix within is a very interesting phenomenon, and let me tell you what it is more deeply on a deeper notion. You see, we're all creatures of a certain system. Right now, whether you believe it or not, you have sworn allegiance to certain ideas that you have accepted for the world. You have sworn allegiance. Without those ideas, you will feel like you don't have a kingdom of existence. But in some sense, when you begin to notice, it's like the way what you see is like it's simultaneously expression and reception. And in the simultaneity, it's as if like how can two points be in one point, and were there ever 2 points? And so it goes into that mystical realm where before the idea of ego it separates, it makes itself multidimensional. And then after making itself multidimensional, what occurs? Because guys, let me tell you something. In many spiritual traditions, unlike religion was like an open message to the world. But many spiritual traditions, it's like these human beings who would find this unique sort of vision, they would in some sense not want to change the world because they begin to comprehend that change has always occurred within. It's like yesterday when you drank a glass of water. to continue beyond nature's interruptions, which must be honored. There is a sense of subjective resurrection going on all the time. In this lifetime, I thought I was just an objective being. And I asked who's thinking, and I came to the conclusion that there's a subjective realm being witnessed beyond. So I believe where we believe space and time are, how there's three dimensions of space and one dimension of time, I believe that vision or that view is actually existing in a higher dimension. And when I say higher dimension, I'm saying that in a unique way. Because the way we see dimensions is we see them as rooms we haven't entered or rooms we cannot see. But for me, it's as if I'm saying this is a sort of multidimensionality pre-thought. So imagine finding a moment on this planet where you're experiencing yourself more than your beliefs. So in some sense, Mr. Within will say one of the most, in some sense, important but ridiculous statements, our civilization needs to hear. Death is an eternal idea, thus suggesting eternity. That means one thing that seems to never die is the fact that all creatures on this planet change. And sometimes what I'm saying is like the only thing not changing is change. And so when I see a system at work and I see a changing system, it's as if I have walked in those halls before. And when you access an intelligence that is aligned with a natural presence, your natural presence, I'm going to say your to empower you, but I'll be honest, the ownership of language it's like we're still children playing with toys. It is a mask upon the world. That is what language is. But it is not a useless mask. It is a mask that serves a certain performance. So as if you're a religious person, you're probably looking at life and being like, okay, all this stuff got created, you know? And so who created it with a design. So my life is designed before me, you know? So in some sense, the concept of destiny made people relax. But at the same time, if you have a view that does not swear an allegiance to a certain design, what if an unshapable moment thinks it's shaped? So I'm kind of like, let me get into the idea of the phoenix within this way, okay? And man, I need to change this up. Okay, let me see. Excuse me. Oh, there we go. I like this one. This is my approach, dear listeners. We are 8 billion creatures. What we share in common is the design of our species. And at the same time, many ways that we engage the world because how our eyes are similarly open. So pretty much I'm saying we're not in a classroom only when we go to school or when we go to the university. We are in the classroom all the time, and there's 8 billion members of it. And how do we conduct this massive classroom? Well, guess what? Why are kids in a classroom? To, in some sense, be introduced to the unknown. For the teacher not to be like, kids memorize these things. I've had teachers who, the dude was like, I think he hated his job. He would just come in, write notes, write all the things the kids had to learn, on the board. And then the whole class, it would just tell the kids take those notes, and then that's it. The guy wouldn't teach, and the kids would just have fun being relaxed in the class. You know, it was a very strange, classroom. But I can tell you and the kids would stay there and they would just engage with the writings on the board. They would not like ask the teacher's not teaching. The teacher is just a guy sitting there, and so the teacher is like silent. And how can I tell you? It's like the kids in our classroom read it and were like, "Sir, what do you mean?" And then the kids asked the teacher the questions for the answers, rather than the teacher just coming and giving the answers before the kids having the question. So I'm saying, now let's think, I'm just assuming, I'm like, okay, if we want to change the world, we got to be able to consider a new dimension to the world. A new dimension to the world would mean seeing what is going on now and then seeing a way this can move. As if, like, I've heard Jordan Peterson say it very beautifully, the discovery of the future occurred at some point for this evolutionary creature. Do you see? As if we didn't consider a future. We were all enlightened, like Zen masters, But then our mind evolved to a capacity where it began wondering and projecting subjectively versions of itself into objective reality. We look in the mirror and we're like, we become self-conscious, or conscientious. But anyways, what I'm trying to say is that you cannot experience life without an honesty to see what it's all about, which could mean that you will be introduced through experiences to explore. So let me tell you why we weren't born, like why our bodies are temporary. Okay, because if they weren't, we wouldn't move around. We would just sit somewhere. We'd be like, okay, we never die. What do we do? So we just sit. Like after we've done everything. But now this is the unique thing. Because we are temporary creatures, you don't realize your mortality is your greatest motivational speech. You know? Once you realize it, you just get your act together, When you realize that your body is in this existence for a certain time, and this body is here to allow the deeper dimensions of your intelligence to express forth. That's the kind of unique creature, active dynamism. They begin extracting it into a character in the world, and it really occurs when something deeply emotional happens. And we're living in a society where people are trying to run away from their emotions. They're trying to run away from the suffering. It's as if like, oh my God, it's bad vibes. I'm gonna get out of here, And so that's fine until you see you gotta confront the movement that is in some sense arising, a movement of ignorance. It means that people are, first of all, as if like they've forgotten that they're independent. They assume they're dependent. Okay? We attach ourselves to the most comfortable story and acceptable story we can find, and if we're not curious, we will live a lie for a lifetime. For me, it's like the greatest thing that kids in school can learn can be the result of the greatest questions being answered. As if imagine there was this TV channel, or this like web series of some sort, where it was the greatest professors all over the planet gathering around, like knights around a King Arthur kind of table, and in that moment being like, okay, we want to use every ability we have to just attempt to solve the universal problem. So I'm at this point where, like, I kind of honestly wish every human being feels as if they're responsible for the continuity of, again, this science project that's appeared out of billions of years. Because there's no greater game to play. Like, what do you do in this life? Physically. Physically, you tell me, what can a person do in this life? You can go. In some sense, it's a series. What the day is is a series of motions. And through these motions that are conducted by an attention that is non local to itself, so believe it or not, your mind, if, it, if there was a mirror, you won't see anything. So, what I'm saying is that the mind for me was how through absence, the illusion became transparent to become the clarity. As if, as some poets have said, including a man named Osho, it's as if the way the, 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 the lie of the world, the theatrical, hollow meanings of the world, they end, believe it or not. Trust me, the way we're designed is that our egos break after we get enough experiences to realize we're not a creature of thought. We are a creature that is using thought. And so, what is this? And there comes the unknown. For me, it's like I feel our society is thirsty. I feel people's minds are not being, as if we've advanced so far, but their minds are not being stimulated. Only their eyes are. So many people, like, believe it or not, like, when I go walk in a shopping mall, do you know what I see? Like the Matrix, I see people with their own program, as if every person is in some sort of, like bubble of their own belief. And as if their personality and their energy, like imagine if we're all like on some level essentially energy. So this energy expresses itself in unique ways. And the reason it does is we say it's because of DNA and just how there's a sort of biological awareness through a self that is unseen. So right now, like when you see the concept of another person, you are also seeing the concept of yourself. You see the interconnectivity of all the ways you have kept the world separate from itself. So I'll create a funny situation right now. Imagine there's this guru, and this kid goes and says, "Guru, tell me the ultimate secret truth." And then the guru looks at the kid and says, "Don't lie." And then the guru leaves never to appear again. And so this kid grows up, lives in life, and his whole entire life is like, "Don't lie." Why would this guy say this is the ultimate truth? Don't lie. Because what if the truth was here before you, and you are too conceptual to see it? Consciousness is, of course, very mysterious, and I'm not making conclusions, but I'm making enough conclusions to inspire the species to ask the questions. One of the most profound lessons of wisdom I received was from listening to an Elon Musk interview where this man was saying the most important thing is to finding the question to ask. Everybody's trying to find a solution to their life, but they don't want to study the question. They don't want to study how the problem is present there. Because the moment they study it, what is studying? It's concentration. What is concentration? Looking at something until subjective meaning arises. It's as if your eyes are like a laser beam, but they're not the way they're having an effect, like the laser beam burning the surface of it, like whatever. Imagine if like laser beams could come from your eyes. The way it's a laser beam is that your attention translates to thought instantaneously. And I'll give you an example, right? If I say the word apple right now, or any word to you can try not to think about it, but the echo of that design has already hit the target. So what I'm telling you is that there is an instantaneous translation of sensory perception into subjective ambition. And this is a transformation that you can, in some sense, say it follows the wings of the phoenix. Or it is the sky the phoenix, in some sense, was a part of. So people feel their ego, like, how can I tell you guys? There were times I'll say something, whatever. It's humorously as well. But I haven't heard the song. Okay. Eyes open in a world. These eyes first see a world. The eyes don't know they're separate yet. Then, when the parents of the child or the world begins sculpting the child through various experiences and certain, you can say, karmic rhythms, as if imagine the stone Michelangelo where he said, like, I saw an angel. So, as if life is, in some sense, bringing suffering to shape your eyes of happiness, the eyes of joy, the eyes of efficiency, the eyes of having a coffee and feeling good about the future. The child, through the communication of its environment, begins to realize it is separate. And then the parents of the child, just like how we see a bird chirping at its chicklings, you know, we see the parents of the human species, you know, in some sense looking at their kid and like saying the kid's name. It's like, hi, son, you know, or like saying his, like a meme, like, you know, but whatever, what, the point I'm trying to make is that the parents are speaking through a sophisticated maneuverance of their subjectivity. They can be there. They're even conscious that they're having thoughts. That's an advanced state of intelligence, believe it or not. And so when you're conscious that you're having thoughts, whether those thoughts are good or bad, when you see that there is a separation between the subjective realm and the objective realm, that means I could sit here and I could have any thought. And so the thought has nothing to do with the moment. Do you see? But many people, this is best described in animal psychology. In animal psychology, in regards to like predators, I believe like apex predators as they call it, pretty much like this, like the tiger on the mountain is working with a sort of territorial intelligence. And what it means is that in its territory, it feels it is its home. And so, when some creature comes into its territory, suddenly rage starts, as if somebody has entered a space that only it's meant for you. So, what I mean by that is that when animals in the wild claim territories, they are creating moments of freedom for themselves. Do you see? They're creating space. And so, we're in a world where 8 billion people, you know, through their own unique subjective gazes, are trying to, in some sense, uh, we are trying to bring the greatest ideas of our species to the front, to the table, you know, to where that global society can do something about it. Without the internet, believe it or not, a great amount of our evolution could not occur. And the reason is that we began subjectively confronting more when knowledge became accessible. When back in the day, in ancient times, when before even the internet, you know, people would get to, like, a traveler would enter a town, and the people of the town, or some towns, would be very nice to the traveler because they had not seen a new face for years. And so when that new face entered that town, it was as if that man was not the same man, as if that man stepped into a portal the moment there were others. He stepped into their worlds as their self claim of who he is. Matsuyo Basho, the Zen master, has this quote where he says, "The journey itself is my home." As if this dude is no longer looking for real estate. He's realized looking for something, that very moment where he's searching a sort of desire, you know, the sort of outcome of a desire. Because rage, premature rage occurs in society when a person's emotional, and as if the world hasn't listened to their mind the way they see the world, and so they're like, what? Then they get angry. We as advanced communicators, as advanced beings that can observe their communication, as you speak, you hear yourself as well, and there's a brilliance to that. The brilliance to that design. There's a brilliance that I can speak right now and feel these sounds translating into meaning. Now I could be overanalyzing it, but let me tell you, I'll tell you what's true depth. Some people, sometimes I speak to people and they're like, "Yo, man, you're looking at things so deeply." And I'm like, "Okay, man, what do you think? Like, I'm looking through a microscope? No, like, the way I'm looking at life is that I've paid attention to the experiences I've been having, and I wasn't always like this. I feel like close to like before 2013, my life was very meaningless to me. Like, I didn't know what I was doing. It was just a series of uncalibrated actions. Like, I had not looked at life and seen life enough to have the proper conclusion, so I was functioning based on fantasy. And every child in this reality, this is the value of education, is that you start off with fantasy. You start off with a notion that anything can mean anything because you're ascribing something. For me, writing or reading is, in some sense, a divine relationship. It is the display of the dance of two dimensions. So, anyways, the child, the child, once being educated by the parents, becomes becomes a creature of name, becomes a creature of language. When he becomes a creature of language, when he enters society, you're not just judged by your looks, ladies and gentlemen. You're judged by your communication ability. And your communication ability depends on how honest you are with your intelligence to access the full thing. And let me tell you, honesty is not a hard thing. It's not like people have to go and be like, "Oh my God, forgive me for the messed up stuff I did," which I'm like, for me, it can happen in an instant because you're looking for a permission that can only be in an instant. When I was younger, me and my brother, we wanted to go play football outside, and in the very gentle streets of Iran. I mean, honestly, very gentle, like nothing but like. And I'll tell you, when we would ask for permission from our mother, and she would give the permission, it's as if she was like she had allowed something that we had subjectively concluded to be real. And many parents don't realize they are, in some sense, by their mere existence in front of the child, they are showing the child how to look at the world. And if the parent doesn't care for the world, I'll tell you, you don't care for the child either. But if you care for the continuity of a precious value, if you see something worth living for, you also need to live for the world that something's going to live in. So for me, I'm like, okay, I could sit all day, just solving my own problems, which I just do automatically. Life is a series of problems, ladies and gentlemen. Let me tell you, though, it's like your eyes open and just like designs begin to take shape, as if the mind begins extracting meaning as the waking state. Civilizations can be rated based on their evolution in a sense of how their relationship with their dimensions are, and how well they can see that there are moments in life where when they don't know, you don't know. But you cannot exist in a moment of intense not knowing and not know anything, as if there's a ship from the distance coming close to the harbor, as if the wisdom of Shakespeare, where he said, even though um, a ship can, I don't know, what is it? He says a ship at harbor, a ship can stay at harbor, but that's not what a ship's made for. Like that, that was the conceptual communication. I don't remember the exact quote. But the idea is that as if you are designed not to just be static. You're designed to be dynamic. You're designed to engage, and in your engagements evolve through your own self-awareness, as if, like, believe it or not, there was a point where nature was doing the work. Nature was evolving us. But now we are conscious. And in being conscious, every moment you're conscious of your moment of existence and what's happening within it. You in some sense extend this subtler, you increase the imagination of our species, which automatically expands the vision of it. And when I say you expand the imagination, that means we are, like, you as a person are seeing scenes, you're seeing images throughout the day. Okay, the life is like your eyes are like a turned on screen, you know. And so you see this screen of sensory perception, this screen that articulates a world, that very elegantly and beautifully articulates matter, you know, where in some sense I can touch this cup, but at the same time, the way I see the cup is the reflection of light into the iris. It's multidimensional. If you explore it, it's life. Oh my god! You will conclude life multidimensionally if you think you're a thought, and if you think you're a presence, and not think. If you know yourself as a presence, then it's not that you live in a world of no thoughts and this vast emptiness everywhere. It's not like the colors of the world suddenly disappear. It's one of those things where the colors of the world advance because your attention to the. So there's an element of authentic engagement and exploration, and you got to let go of the styles that are not yours. All those people, in some sense, who, how can I tell you? It's like reading books and being like, if I write the same way these writers are, then what's the point? What's the point of everybody writing in the same way? What is this, robot land? You know, like it's too robotic. It's too. Oh man, I'm diving into too many concepts. Take yourself, like, pretty much my efforts in these talks, guys, is trying to make the person realize that novelty is where the expression of the spirit is its own evidence. And the expression of the spirit, or consciousness, whatever you like to call it, whatever symbol you want to put on, you know, an idea that's, it's not even an idea. It's like, it's not a story. Your true intelligence is not a story, but your knowledge is based on stories. What is, you know what I'm saying? I'm saying that the system requires to collapse for, for the intelligence in that system to see beyond that system. So without death, in some sense, there is no ending to the movie. There's no transition to a more subtler state of existential value or non-value. Because let me tell you, it in some sense, karma and the whole wheel of karma, and how in some sense souls are bound in a sort of system of ignorance, and they keep being reborn or whatever. For example, Buddhism entertains such thoughts. It is kind of strange how, like, why an eternal being needs to survive. This is why the more we seek in a material truth, the less our attention is on matter, the less materialism is valuable. I personally experienced this in my life in like such an intense way at times. You know, I felt like, think of it this way: you read a book, you see the writer's style of approach. Like your writer's style is like how you lay concepts forth. Pretty much communication is that. For me, when I speak, believe it or not, on some subtle level, I'm having a geometric experience in my language, as if certain points, as if when one starts speaking about the world, they begin to animate the world through an interconnectivity of many aspects of many different memories, in some sense colliding and coagulating, in a sense as if icebergs melting into one ocean, as if there is suddenly a vast commonality. You see an interconnectivity to life that simplifies the explanation of intelligent snapshots of it. So you see, so after you study yourself, it's like it shouldn't take too long. You know, for people it can occur 20 minutes, it can occur in an instant. But what I'm saying, or it could take a long time. But when you study yourself and you find contentment with that dimension, and you find total contentment. Total contentment means you have no fear existing in your own dimension. Then you can experience dimensions of a higher caliber of expression. So what I'm telling you is that if you don't feel comfortable with your existence, then that's the wrong story to function. And usually when people make tragic mistakes of not being grateful for the opportunity of life, honestly what occurs is that life keeps growing. Like, it doesn't matter what we say on some point, because there's going to be so many people coming after us. Like, you know, and when they come after us, they, in some sense, see all the children that are speaking new ideas. As if um, you cannot stop time from, from revealing existence's next expression. Time is like electricity in a machine. It is like the soul of the screen of space. Time is the soul of space for abstract idea. That's the peak of the mountain right there. Plato has this idea where he says, and guys, hopefully my voice is coming loud enough, because if it's not, then you know, Godspeed. I should finish this timeline I was explaining. Eyes open in a world. Child, this creature that is just a moment pre-thought, before thought has entered the awareness. This creature is like just the world. Believe it or not, children start off with their intelligence thinking that they're the whole world, until the parents again educate them and communicate to them in ways where they can introduce them to their subjective capability. And when the parent introduces the child to their subjective capability, parents are there to only uh, uh, no human being can take you to your greatness. And these talks that I give, I often say they're just a mirror, ladies and gentlemen. They're just a mirror of the moment, but they are the designs are able to be communicated. There's this very funny story. My mother told me when I was young. Her brother, she told me, and it was the story of this this person was a shoemaker who had like the lowest like class of civilization, the lowest respect or whatever. And so this shoemaker, his son, like one day he's like curious. Okay, he's like, my son's old enough, let me go ask him. And he goes and asks the kid, and the shoemaker wants to be like a business, like he wants, like, he's poor. So he looks at his son, and he looks at his son. And he's like, son, I have a question that I've never asked you. And the son's like, what is it, Dad? And then the father says, son, what do you want to be when you grow in this world? What do you want? Where do you want to end up? What do you want to be when you grow up? Pretty much. And the son looks at his dad and he's like, I love this being. This being has been totally, aligned. Of course, not every parent is like that, but I'm saying, in some sense, that's what the father figure can be. And so what I'm telling you is that the child looks at his father and he's like, I don't want to say anything that's going to upset him, you know. And then, oh, the father takes a deep breath. This is the funny part. Okay, the father takes a deep breath. My son. And he looks at his son and he's like, oh my god, this son wants to be a shoemaker? How dumb is this kid? And he looks at his son and he says, son, I ended up as a shoemaker, but I wanted to be a king. And you who want to be a shoemaker, what are you going to end up as? And the kid gets this shock out of, like, in his mind, it was like a sort of peaceful, cloud of compassion between father and son. Suddenly it turned into this confrontation. And so what the father was trying to evoke is that, if you notice, parents want what they, in some sense, didn't have. Like, pretty much even I'm like that. Like, if I feel if I have kids, I want them to see more than the world that I saw. You know. And so think of how many children on this planet are being mistreated. Their minds are not given an opportunity to, in some sense, generate perhaps what could be the greatest vision, the greatest ideal. Think about all the human beings on this planet unnecessarily dying without attempting to utilize an intelligence that is not obsessed by just objects and subjects. It learns to learn from the moment. It learns to stand as the moment. It learns to be present with nature. There's a quote from a person in history who, in some sense, the way he's known through history is through a sort of mythical value, you know. And so his name is Rishi Vyasa, and he was I consider him a self from another moment. And he says, it is nature that causes all movement. Deluded by the ego, the fool harbors the perception that says, I did it. The fool harbors the perception that says, I did it, when he doesn't realize it's all nature's movement. And that's the issue with all the isms in the world. That is the issue with world peace. There is not an effort from each side to want to comprehend each other's world. And what that means is we can't avoid a global community, believe it or not. Like I've kind of seen this, you know. And what this means is we have to begin respecting cultures to preserve them because their inevitability is their integration. So it's as if you respect your child's individuality at the same time, you know, embracing the child's individuality, and every day as if like, you know, a lion looks at his lion cub and tells him he's the king. What that means is many princes on this planet, many princes who have been born, many blessed children, as if their guardian angel was the wealth they were born in. And I find that a very interesting idea. But anyways, what I'm saying is these children, it's as if when the king back in the day handed down the crown, that was a moment where the thought, as if like the past's greatness looks upon modernity's greatness and says, I am giving the crown to you. What are you going to do? And so, as if the prince gets this ultimate freedom when he is the king of the world. And so, most people are trying to experience that freedom by trying to attain an incredible amount of, like, everybody on the street, like you ask them, you know, like any person you ask, they're all drawn to money. Money is like is the light where all these moths are being drawn towards, but they don't realize it as they go towards this. And of course, guys, I'm not like economy is very sophisticated, and I have a lot of respect like for an economy professor, you know, for an economist. But I'll tell you, at the same time, it's as if you can't avoid it. Just like moths go into a flame, we as creatures have built a society founded by this flame where people like their survival now depends on finding this currency, finding this object. Pretty much, people when what is work, what is making a living, you want to attain a sort of objective freedom and value. And of course, that's the game. That's the game of our history at the moment. It's like when in Rome be Roman. You know. So similarly, when in a blind system, it's okay. Playfully walk, but know that the clarity is there. And if the clarity seeks to be inspired, if you like wake up one day and you have a unique view of the world, write it down. Write it down. Because you'll experience something cool. Years later, you will read your own sentence and you will see dimensions to your mind. It's as if you see how far your past could see and where you are. And then you get inspired because now you realize you have seen much further. Like your intelligence has articulated a sort of path through with your knowledge into the unknown that is on an instantaneous level away. It has accepted the world, the designs of the world. So when you reach that, it's as if your subjectivity is like the caveman taking two sticks, taking duality and trying to make fire. But this fire is more oriented towards the continuity of the absorbing, of the receiving and expressive experience. As if we are tunneling through reality. We are leaving our mark. We are having an influence here. You know, our stories matter, but they matter as much as the world can hear them. And so parts of society have to put an effort to um, preserve the clarity found in certain designs because when a species tries to jump into a dimension, as if like dimensions are things where you grow, like evolution, it's like a natural growing thing. So what that means is like, you've planted the seed in the soil, and you're attempting to pick the fruit, but the seed is still in the soil, you know. And so what that means is our species is jumping ahead of itself in some manner, but at the same time, as it is jumping ahead, it will find itself only taking responsibility. That means the path of human prosperity is through realizing that you are this moment, where your knowledge gets updated and I guess in some sense redesigned by the new phenomena that enters your awareness. So the way I see the concept of self for me is I, I stabilize it first in my objective body, in my biological body. So my body is still me, you know. It's like when I'm dancing. Like when I was younger, I saw these like old school like breakdancing, what do you call it, videos, and I would do the wave just all the time, just waving around. But then I realized my mind's been waving. My attention is the emissary of the majesty of my free will. Study your attention. Secrets of your universe at first are revealed, and then through further acceptance of universal presence, you begin to see the universe as the universe, to realize you were never in a universe when the universe was the universe. Something like that. Conceptually, you step out of that labyrinth of ideological relationship, as if like, imagine like you have these cords, like in this sci-fi situation, you have this helmet on with different cords attached to it. You can one by one take these channels of interpretations of the world. Like you see, you have an ability with your free will to realign your intelligence. And not per se genetically that much, but if you consider there to be this X factor behind your eyes, this unknown that is gazing, that is like the effect of its gaze is knowledge, but the cause of its gaze is the unknown. We are the world's greatest mystery because we're mysterious. All of one's reality breaks. Man and God, or the attention that is seeing the world that way, no longer requires any sort of dualism. As if God, like when Meister Eckhart, this Christian mystic, said, the same eyes that I see God are the same eyes God sees me. In, for example, Islam and many other religions, Judaism, there's a lot of speech about a sort of love for the creator of all creation. Like, as if like somebody like they told somebody like love your parents, love your kids, and then suddenly like the parents of that guy came and said no, love the creator of the world, because then you will love the whole world. And so, if many religious people, in some sense, tune into that frequency of looking at religion, they will realize it is an alignment, it is a subjective way of gazing at how the world can be just. But what if it is? What if there's justice before the injustice? What if the truth um, never needed to find itself? You know, I say this cool statement sometimes. It's you're free before you need to be. Find that sort of freedom. That's a sort of mystical freedom in the sense that your relationship with thought and your relationship with language and symbology, you realize your presence. It's present. There's an instantaneous moment of intelligence, which is being wakefulness, and then whatever is happening in this wakefulness is nature. As if we are a part of nature, seeing nature beyond nature. As if we are the imagination of a God beyond words, a God of the whole existential magnitude of reality. So, in some sense, our biological evolution has now provided an ability for a subjective evolution, and through our subjective evolution, you align to an intelligence that its intuition is like, rather than you feel like you gotta do something for the future, as if the future already has designs and it's gonna appear to you in a certain way, you are just choosing how you receive it. As if don't think about the future as if what you have to do every day. Think of it in the sense that life will happen to you regardless, and it's you who's taking it in and sheltering it in any story of it. Right now, I'm speaking to you in English. I can speak in Farsi as well. And I can also make any other sound that could mean anything. But I'm telling you, we value language beyond it. So your knowing cannot just be intellectual, because intellect is relevant to concepts, and concepts are relevant to language, and language is relevant to a symbol. Again, looping back into, going full circle into, as if the known is in a circular way, cyclically. It's like we know things, we don't know things. We exist, we don't exist. Species, they come on this planet. The civilizationary attempt is made, and so then the species goes extinct, and then thousands of years, species come, and like they look at the structures of past species and they're like, holy shit, how they make the pyramid. So in some sense, we look at ways that life brings creatures into form, and creatures with a sophisticated multidimensionality, and then at the same time takes it back. But it's as if during that time, that thought was not there for no reason. That means the design of the universe is a suggestion that there is someone in the room of the cosmos, and that makes it exciting, you know. And so whatever I'm saying now, like some people say, like they some people don't like criticism. For me, criticism is like the greatest movie you can watch. And when someone criticizes me, it is like an honor to hear how another mind sees reality. That's when true listening begins. You listen to the world of the other because you have already listened to the world of the self. Once you abide by your intuition, communication advances to higher rhythms. And communication is one of those things where it's sparked up into a certain momentum, and it's as if this immaterial vision is inspiring your material existence. And as this immaterial vision is inspiring your material existence, at some point of a rhythmic relationship between your subjective and objective realm, between what you consider to be externally intelligence and what you consider internally to be intelligence, regardless if you put it in the garb of a soul, in the idea of a soul or whatever. But like I'm telling you, when you look at the core of it, you see from many degrees the center of the circle. Infinity is connected to a singular emptiness, as if in all of empty, every hit existence hovers. Once the story of the world first is broken, and then you find a value in generating like an honest life, you gotta generate it. You gotta just forget everything you thought you were, and allow a new moment to actually be a new moment, not just another filterization of a past self, trying to act like the future, yet it cannot let go of the past. The greatest statement I've heard in the English language is the past is past. That's the best argument. So, anyways, the creature eventually has to let go of its subjective realm, and it has to let go of its objective realm. So, believe it or not, what people think is the afterlife is like how we were from the beginning existent in two dimensions, and not. I will say from the beginning, even though not from the beginning we weren't aware we were in these two dimensions, the subjective and the objective dimension. And so when a person dies, because their whole subjective dimension, like they've created like they are an idea to themselves that has a certain expectation of their ability. And when that idea, it's as if like when one nears the exit of the road, one begins to in some sense reach a point where the whole journey, regardless of what it was, must be embraced. Your life has a meaning that only you can see and dare not deny. That regardless of what you do, you were a design in a world that could see you. That is quite the achievement. So as you reach a point, so think of it this way: objective awareness first, then came subjective awareness, then this subjective awareness, in some sense, transitions. Then your objective awareness transitions. It's like you can say enlightenment can be said to be like a bunch of kids trying to climb this short wall, and some kids put an effort and eventually do it, and some kids just keep trying and they don't. And these are beings who, before their objective body dismantles, they're still stuck on the subjective dimension, as if they haven't explored their mind their whole life. So when their mind is about to be taken away in that last moment, they were like, "Oh my God, what was it all about?" And I'm Mr. Within, like with these talks, I'm just trying to like give a heads up to just all existentially self-aware creatures that yes, there is mortality. I mean, like we would say. The children of space listen to Father Time. The phoenix within, the presence discovered within the personality. As the personality dies through the ashes of presence, which is an acknowledgement of an empty, intelligent being, and as this empty, intelligent moment of beingness, like you experience it, you suddenly begin your new personalities arise. So the thing is, a lot of people, you're not trying to get rid of a tool. It is a tool to open the eyes that can create greater tools. I hope this talk has served you. And when you truly tap into that present intelligence, you require to abide by it. It's very important I'm using that word. When you find, when you feel like you reach a moment in this life where you suddenly, you know you are your honest self, you know you're a self that has no resistance subjectively to any idea, because you're just, it's as if, let me tell you, your honest self is not the expression of your personality. Your honest self is uh, how the expression arises due to a certain attention. Mindfulness is it's like with one conscious breath entering heaven on earth and realizing that earth was always in heaven, that all the fears that men had were generations and reactions. They were stimulus. Our personalities are just responses. But at the same time, what holds it together, it cannot be put into a thought. And that's the beautiful thing. It's as if like there's a beauty that is physical beauty, like you see like the sunset sky and you're like, man, I live in a nice world. And then you see that sunset sky and you see that beauty, and then at the same time there's a sort of beauty when you see the species evolve beyond the unnecessary thoughts that hinder its efficiency. The task of advanced communicators is to make civilization efficient. Imagine a global thing where every person wakes up and they're like, yo, let me see how I can make this world like a more efficient vision. A success that is a world allowed entrance to all. And in Buddhism, in a special branch of Buddhism, it's called Pure Land Buddhism. In this branch of Buddhism, as if like there was a sort of Buddhic figure who created an enlightened dimension. He created a world, as if he became a world where many beings became a world in. And in some sense he entered the pure lands, and the pure lands were in some sense, a pure acknowledgement of existential value, one that is not constantly trying to generate itself into thought. A man goes, this kid wants to get enlightened. This is like an ancient enlightenment wisdom story. I believe it's from the Zen tradition, Zen or Vedic, one of these. And how the story goes is this kid in the town suddenly wants to know the ultimate truth of everything. This kid asks around, and some people say, yeah, there's an enlightened person. He lives, distant to the town, at the edge of the town, and like near the woods. So this kid goes there, and every day he goes there, it's like a long walk, okay, but he goes and he sees the guy, and the guy is like this very simple, peaceful man just sitting on his porch. And so this kid goes and he just starts talking right away. He says, hi, like he introduces himself, and then he says, um, teach me the ultimate enlightenment, or teach me the ultimate truth of reality, something like that. And imagine that guy was like, the guy doesn't say this in the story, but imagine that guy was like, get off my porch. But how the story goes is that the guy is unresponsive. The guy doesn't say anything. But the kid somehow goes there to ask, you know. And this old man is just, let's say, sitting on this like sage, like it's just sitting on it, like on his porch or whatever, the Zen master or whatever, And after some time, like weeks pass where this kid constantly attempts to get some sort of response from this guy to figure out and see what his world is. Eventually, the kid gets angry. He gets fed up. He's like, "What is this, man? I've been here so long. Every day I'm asking you, like, why don't you tell me? Why don't you tell me this?" And the kid gets angry and he's just super rude and he leaves. And the guy still doesn't say anything. And the kid leaves and he's like, "I'm never coming back, man. You like, there's something wrong with you, you know." And he goes. And as the kid walks, suddenly he gets this feeling like, shit, I feel like I need to go back. As if the kid feels like maybe this man who's been quiet and peaceful this whole time has something. Like he gets this feeling. He goes back, and when he reaches the porch, suddenly the guy looks at him, the sage, and he says, he's smiling, and he says, "Why this ceaseless coming and going?" And it's said that that kid attains a sort of revelatory enlightenment. He sees something about the truth of the world that he had not seen before, as he had divided it into many illusions. Why this ceaseless coming and going? When the ego asks itself this, it becomes transparent. When it becomes transparent, you have reached the Pure Lands. You realize that the complexity was all occurring in simplicity. And the simplicity, it's as if from the simple complexity arises. Without the simple, complexity could not exist. Without one, the number two could not exist. Without the ego, the infinite stories of the body cannot exist. And so you reach empty seeing, what I call empty seeing emptiness. You become a sight in a moment. And then inevitably, based on the will of nature, your mind reassembles itself. And so, pretty much think of it this way: it's like you take a shower beyond the thoughts and beliefs you've, in some sense, been carrying for so long. As if you drop this backpack filled with books that you read once, now you have to carry the whole your whole life. And imagine these books are again the thoughts, the subjective implication of meaning. Rishi Vyasa has this very heavy, I'll say heavy because it may, like, some listeners might not appreciate it, but like, it's honestly this very profound and incredible statement. Krishna, not Krishna, Rishi Vyasa says, to save the family, abandon a man. To save the village, abandon a family. To save the country, abandon a village. To save the soul, abandon the earth. And what he means is not like you start acting like a renunciate. What he's saying is that to save the soul, abandon the earth. Abandon the story you've placed on this, and you will see a new dimension found their way. Anyways, thanks for listening. I'll say one closing statement. Beyond systems of resurrection, the phoenix within is your newest moment. Don't let your life be dictated by your past. Pay, like I personally and playfully I say, I pay maybe 2%, attention to my own story of my past, like the stories I believe in. For me, beliefs are stepping stones of a mind beyond belief. That means you can try to believe my truth, but you can't. I could say anything and somebody could try to believe it, but you can't. Because, again, eyes in different rooms. Allow novelty to remind you of the ultimate truth. Much blessings and love. Thank you for listening.